What if the season you're calling your worst one is actually the clearest sign that something is about to change? Most people miss this completely. They interpret the hardest stretch of their life as proof that things are falling apart, when research on personal growth and scripture, long before that research existed, both point to something different. The hardest seasons often show up right before the biggest shifts, not instead of them. Today we're walking through 7 signs that often appear right before a breakthrough psychologically and biblically, so that if you're in one of these seasons right now, you can recognize it for what it actually is. There's a well-documented concept in psychology called post-traumatic growth, the idea that significant personal transformation often happens not despite hardship, but directly through it. Difficult seasons loss, upheaval, exhaustion, uncertainty frequently precede the biggest shifts in identity, purpose, and resilience a person will ever experience. This isn't the same as saying hardship is good, or that suffering should be sought out. It's simply recognizing a real pattern. Growth and difficulty are far more intertwined than we tend to assume, especially in a culture that treats struggle as purely a sign something has gone wrong. Scripture reflects this same pattern throughout. Seasons of intense difficulty consistently show up right before major turning points, not as punishment, but as part of the process. Let's look at 7 specific signs where this shows up. 1. Increased stress or resistance right as you're growing. It's common to notice that the moment you commit more seriously to a goal, a relationship, or your faith, things seem to get harder, not easier. Psychologically, this often reflects the discomfort of genuine change. Old patterns, relationships, or coping mechanisms resist being disrupted, even good disruption. Scripturally, this mirrors a consistent pattern. Opposition often intensifies right as someone steps toward their purpose, not because progress has stalled, but because something significant is underway. When Moses was born, Pharaoh's decree to kill Hebrew infants had already been issued. The threat appeared before the calling was even revealed. Increased resistance, in both frameworks, is often a sign of proximity to something meaningful, not evidence that you're on the wrong path. 2. A strange, unexplainable exhaustion. This one confuses people more than almost any other. You're doing the right things, showing up, working toward growth, drawing closer to your faith, and instead of feeling lighter, you feel completely drained. In a way, rest doesn't fully resolve. Psychologically, meaningful change requires real cognitive and emotional labor. The mind and body genuinely expend energy processing new patterns, even positive ones. This is sometimes described as decision fatigue or adjustment exhaustion, a documented real cost of sustained internal change. Galatians 6, verse 9 captures this directly. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. The weariness is named as something that happens right before the harvest, not a sign the effort has failed. 3. People around you start to drift. This is often one of the most painful signs and one of the most misunderstood. As a person changes habits, priorities, mindset, relationships built around the old version of them sometimes naturally shift too. Psychologically, this is a well-known part of identity change. Not everyone in your life will move at the same pace or toward the same things you're now moving toward. Scripturally, this pattern appears clearly with Abraham, instructed to leave his country, his people, and his father's household before the promised blessing came. Separation preceding, not following, the breakthrough. And Joseph's story shows the same shape. He could not become who he was meant to be, while still surrounded by the brothers who resented his future. Distance, in both cases, isn't necessarily rejection. Sometimes it's simply a sign that a season with certain people has run its course. 4. Prayers or efforts that suddenly feel unanswered. There's a particular kind of silence that can show up during a difficult season where effort, prayer, or hope seem to hit a wall and produce nothing back. Psychologically, this can resemble what's sometimes called the dip, a documented low point in nearly every process of meaningful change, where progress feels invisible even though internal shifts are still happening beneath the surface. Scripturally, this mirrors the story of Lazarus. Jesus deliberately waited 2 additional days before responding, a delay that felt like abandonment to Mary and Martha, but was actually making room for something far bigger than the healing they'd originally hoped for. Silence, in both frameworks, isn't necessarily absence. It can be evidence that something larger is still forming. 5. Losing interest in things that used to matter to you. Suddenly, certain habits, environments, or circles that once felt exciting start to feel hollow or misaligned. Psychologically, this is a recognizable part of identity development. As a person's values and priorities shift, their tolerance for what no longer fits shifts with it. This discomfort is not necessarily depression. It can simply be detachment from an old identity, making room for a new one. Scripturally, 2 Corinthians 5 verse 17 puts this plainly. The old has gone, the new is here, described as a completed shift, not a slow fade. The discomfort of outgrowing an old life often shows up before the new one fully arrives. 6. An unexplainable sense of peace in the middle of chaos. This is one of the more striking signs. Circumstances haven't resolved, the stress is still present, the outcome still uncertain, and yet a genuine sense of calm arrives that doesn't match the situation logically. Psychologically, this can reflect a shift toward what's sometimes called cognitive reappraisal, the mind settling into acceptance or trust even before circumstances change, which is strongly associated with resilience and long-term coping. Philippians 4 verse 7 describes this precisely as the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, a peace that is explicitly not meant to make logical sense given the circumstances. In both frameworks, this kind of settled calm often arrives before the external situation actually shifts, not after. 7. A quiet inner knowing before any outward evidence. The final and perhaps most personal sign, a sense, deep and hard to fully explain, that something is shifting internally, even though nothing has visibly changed yet. Psychologically, this can reflect accumulated internal processing finally reaching conscious awareness, often described as intuition, which research suggests is frequently pattern recognition operating below conscious thought, not random guessing. Scripturally, Hebrews 11 verse 1 names this directly. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, an inner conviction that precedes visible proof. Elijah, similarly, declared the sound of abundant rain while the sky was still completely clear, sensing the shift before there was any physical evidence of it at all. None of these 7 signs, on their own, guarantee anything specific is about to happen, but together, they form a pattern worth paying attention to, one that shows up consistently, both in how growth is psychologically understood and in how Scripture repeatedly describes seasons right before major turning points. The core reframe is this: difficulty is not automatically evidence that something has gone wrong. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's evidence that something significant is already underway, even if you can't fully see it yet. If you recognize several of these signs in your own life right now, here's where to go from here. 1. Reframe the difficulty before you interpret it. Ask whether this hard season resembles growth-related struggle, not just crisis, before assuming the worst. 2. Give unresolved effort more time before concluding it's failed. Both psychology and Scripture suggest meaningful shifts often happen beneath the surface before they're visible. 3. Let some relationships shift without forcing them to stay the same. Not every relationship is meant to carry into your next season, and that's not automatically a loss. 4. Pay attention to unexplainable calm, and don't dismiss it. It may be a sign of internal readiness, even before your circumstances have caught up. 5. Trust a quiet, persistent inner sense without needing full proof, yet both intuition and faith are described as legitimate forms of knowing that precede visible evidence. The hardest season of your life might not be the sign that something is falling apart. It might be the sign that something is finally being built. If you recognized yourself in even one of these 7 signs, drop a comment. I recognize the season I'm in. Let that be an honest moment of reflection, not just a comment. And subscribe to Grace to Grow. Every week, we explore one mind and one scripture at a time. Let's grow together.